Hi guys, welcome to another video. So we're back with the SIG project today. I've been waiting for parts to come through for the SIG, which is why I hadn't done a follow-up video just yet. I didn't think they would take as long to arrive as they did, but they have now arrived. So the remaining parts I was waiting for was the steel trigger pin. Again, this is all Garda stuff. The stainless steel recoil spring guide, the fake sort of firing pin assembly for the back of the slide, which I know is not technically necessary, but I wanted it, and the steel takedown lever, which we are going to need because we're running the steel slide. So what we need to do now is decide where we're going to start. Usually I would start with the lower. I think this time round though, I'm going to get the slide done first. Just because the lower is going to take quite a bit of time to do. And then once we've got the slide together, we can then sort of look at how we're going to do any tuning if we need to. We're probably going to have to use a slightly different recoil spring. The recoil spring on this is pretty good actually, but I suspect with a steel slide on it, it's going to not be so good. So let's strip this down. So again, to strip the pistol, lock the slide back, rotate that round 90 degrees, and then slide the front off. So what we now need to do is take out the bits we need. So we're going to take the recoil guide rod out, which I've got the stainless steel version of, so we can put that over one side. We want the recoil spring for now. We don't need the outer barrel because we've got our own one. So we're going to remove the outer barrel from there, put that over one side. So we need that. And then we need to remove the blowback unit and the sights because we're going to retain these for now. I probably will order the Garda steel sights at some point, but to be fair, these don't look too bad, do they? So I think we're just going to stick with those for now. So anyway, let's get some tools together and we'll start taking this apart. So what we need to use then to do this, now you don't need lots of fancy tools or anything, but I like to try and use a magnetic tray just for any pins and screws. So we're going to keep that over one side. I've got two sets of screwdrivers. These are a small set of small bits, and I've got a slightly larger set which has some slightly larger screw bits in here as well. Probably going to start out using this one, mainly just because it's got this long extension on it if I need to use it. I do use the other one sometimes as well, but to be honest with you, I tend to find to use my normal hand tools, so normal screwdrivers rather than these type. However, these screws are quite deep in here, which are down in here, which we need to remove. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll get this out, and then we'll get the sights off, and then we'll have an empty plastic slide. So let's get cracking then. So to start off with, let's get this out. Let's get those screws out. I suspect it's that size there for these. Yep, that is the one. So get this out. Now I suspect these go into the rear sight. That's not very deep. Okay, so let's take the rear sight off. We'll put that in the tray, get the screws out. Let's have both those in the tray as well. And then we should, I believe, be able to remove the blowback unit as is. I don't think there's anything else holding it in. I don't see anything else. So I think it should just drop out. Sometimes these are, especially Tokamoru being that they're plastic slides, sometimes you do have to bend the outer shell of the slide open slightly to get it out. So far, I don't seem to be having any luck with it coming forwards. Ah, there we go. I've just bent the rear out slightly, which has meant that the blowback unit has moved up a bit. I'll do that to the front. Hopefully that will come out. Yeah, there we go. Now, something has just come out. I believe it's the guide rod. Yeah, that's the guide rod for the nozzle spring. So we're going to put that over one side because we're going to need that. And let's get this the rest of the way out. it's a bit fiddly. There we go. And there's our empty slide apart from our front sight. Now the front sight on these, there's a little clip. I don't know whether you can see it in there at all. I'm not sure if that's picking it up in there at all. But there is a little clip which we need to release first. Usually we just pull on that back and that should just release. So we're going to go in there, pull that back. No, that's not having it. Let's use a flat blade. These are really handy as well, little small flathead screwdrivers. So we need to get that out. However, you can just about make it out, and there's this little thing in here we need to release, which has just shot out and hit me in the face. Great. There's the clip we want. Okay, it's not magnetic, but I'm going to put it in that tray anyway. And that should come out. There we go. There's our front sight. So that is our empty plastic slide. Now I did want to get some weights, some scales so I can weigh this against the steel slide. However, I forgot. So take it from me, that's silly light. So we'll get that over one side. So we've got all the parts we need now. Let's just inspect our nozzle. I need to dry this off, it's full of oil. I'd always recommend to give everything a good clean before you assemble it. So there's our nozzle return spring, put that in there. There's our nozzle. And the reason why we're inspecting it is obviously I don't know the history of this pistol. I've no idea if it's been out before, it's been changed, or if it's got any damage. Obviously you're looking to make sure the feeding probe on the front there is still there. Doesn't appear to be any other damage. And we just want to make sure as well that the valve inside is freely moving. The pistol was working beforehand, so it should be. We can see in there, that's moving nicely. So that's fine. So I'm happy that's all good. Here's our blowback unit, and we can see it does have a cup style piston head. Now, lots of people upgrade these for O-ring piston heads, which is not a bad shout, but these actually work better than you think. You'd think an O-ring would do a really good job, but these cup style are really good because as the gas goes in, it pushes the cup out, creating a great seal. Sometimes they don't work quite so well with steel slides, so we might need to upgrade this at a later stage. I think from memory, I have the upgraded piston head in amongst all my other parts. So if we do, we'll fit that. If not, we're going to reuse this. Now, if you remember from the previous video, I showed you that the steel slide actually came with a blowback unit. Now, I believe the reason for that, having done some research, is you can see on the side of this one, it has these raised sections. The reason why it has these raised sections here is so it fits inside the slide. And you can see there's a recess inside the slide there for that to clip into, which is why I had to pull the slide apart like that to be able to get the blowback unit out. So my understanding is this one won't fit inside the steel slide because it's got these parts on the side. We could file these off, but equally we might want to return it back to stock, so we're not going to bother with that. I will leave the piston head in there for now because I believe I've got a replacement for it, but we'll go from there as and when we come across it. Okay, so let's just unwrap the steel slide. I showed you this before, guys. This was the Garda. This is the old style marking, early version marking, but it is listed for the 226R, but it does say on the outer packaging that it is for the E2, which is what we want. Whether or not this will still work with the railed, I don't know, but it is listed for the E2, so I'm expecting this to work no problem. So what we've got with this, there's your blowback unit. So we can see the difference between the two there, side by side. This one is obviously raised like this, so it clips into the plastic slide. Obviously the steel slide is not going to give, so this is the replacement for that. Now notice we do have a nozzle guide in here, which is just screwed in. So we are going to need to fit that into the new one as well. And what that basically does is that just centralises the nozzle. So if it does over travel, when it starts to come back in, it doesn't jam up. Okay, so we need to change that over potentially. So what we'll probably do is start out building this up. I'm going to put the front sight in this as well, just because I don't want to lose that clip. Last time I did this, it was a pain in the arse. So I'm expecting it to be a bit of a pain this time. So let's get the front sight put in place. It goes in reasonably and snugly actually, which is nice. And there's our clip. We can see that it's got a little recess one side. That I believe is up, so that needs to go in that way. And this is as fiddly as I seem to remember it. So this is going to be a bit of a pain. Any bits that are going to be really difficult to do, I'm probably going to just skip ahead a little bit. No, that's gone straight in. Amazing. Perfect, so that's all in there, all good now. So that's a relief. So I don't have any instructions with this. This is how Garda stuff comes. You get no instructions whatsoever. You can look up the instructions if you want to. We can see there's a couple of holes in the slide here, and there's also the ejector, which is missing, which in the Toka Marui one is a piece of plastic and it isn't separate. So what we want to try to do now is to fit that in place. Some of them press in place in some of the Glock slides. I've never done a SIG one before, so I've no idea if it presses in or not, but it will be in this little packet here. And you can see there's some other bits and pieces here, which basically just replace the, well, block those little holes. Now my understanding is we've got two options for blocking those holes off, either silver or black. I'm going for a dual tone look on this pistol, so I think I might go with the silver. I just dropped one anyway, so I'll put them in there for now. If we can get this extractor out. But I will keep the black ones. You guys let me know in the comments what you think I should go with, whether or not I should go with the black or the silver. I think the silver would be a nice... If it was an all black pistol, I'd stay with the black, but because I'm going dual tone on this, I think the silver would look quite good. So we need to fit the extractor in place. And that slides in, and it looks like it doesn't actually press in place. It looks like it just sits there. So we're not going to worry too much about that at the moment, because I'm going to have to put that in when I put the blowback unit in. The other thing I have noticed is that there's a slight bend in this one. You can see this is angled, which is normal, but there is a slight bend in this one. It's not quite straight. So whether that's supposed to be the case or not, I don't want to bend it and snap it. So I'm just going to try and install it as is. Okay. So we'll leave that out and we'll look at what these will look like. I believe this is designed to replicate a roll pin that is going through the top slide. If I can put this in place, see what it looks like. And that will sit like that. I think that's a good shout. I think I'm going to go with that one, to be fair. I think that looks pretty good. I could just fit the black one. We'll put the black one on the other side, see what that looks like. Yeah, equally looks good, but again, at least that looks like, the silver one looks like it is a separate piece, which is nice. So I'm going to use the silver ones. I'm sure everyone in the comments will tell me that I made the silly mistake. I should have used the black ones, but there we go. Right, let's get that in place. It is a bit of a faff. Right, so they are both fully in place now, which is good. There we go. So let's just drop our blowback unit in, see how it fits straight away. Nice. So that's a bit of a result. Sometimes you have to do some clearancing to make these fit. Garda stuff notoriously sometimes will go together great, other times won't. So now I'm going to take the piston head off of here. Usually there's a screw in the end here and the piston head just pushes over the end of it. So I'm going to pop that off. I did look for my piston head and it looks like either I've misplaced it or I didn't order it like I thought I did, which is probably more likely. So I think we're going to stick with the stock one for now because I don't have any other option. So we're now going to take out the nozzle guide. So we need to undo this screw in here. We'll get that out. There's our screw. Put that in my pot. Then we need to lift that out. There we go. And nicely, they put a little arrow on it so that you can only get it one way around. Now there's a screw remaining in the blowback unit here, which is what the piston head clips over. So I need to remove that. Once I've got that out, then we're done with our blowback unit here and we can start assembling the new one. There we go, there's our screw out. Lovely, I'll leave that out because I'm going to use that now. So we're now done with this blowback unit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back inside the Toka Marui slide, just because it's now in place and I'm not going to lose it or misplace it or anything. Just make sure that's clipped in, which it now is. So that's all back in there. Right, so I'm going to put these little inserts into the little jiffy bag again, because I don't want to lose them in case I change my mind and want to change them to the black ones. So we'll put that back in the packet for the slide. There we go. Right, so now what I think we'll do is we'll start building up the blowback unit. Okay, so blowback unit. First thing we want to do then is put this screw in, which is what we use to hold the piston head in place. So that needs to go in there. Is it tapped? Yes, it is. Nice. Okay, so that goes in there. We haven't got to do it crazy tight because it's not holding anything in. I'm actually going to put the nozzle guide in next and the screw that secures it. I expect this will be a bit of a pain to line up, because they usually are. There we go. So we want our screw for that now. That needs to go in there. Is it tapped? Yes, it is. Nice, that's a result. So let's put that on that way. There we go. So that's all in there, so I can put the piston head inside the blowback unit. There we go. And then I can reinstall the nozzle into there. Now you can see that is a bit tight. Now it's in there. If we want to check our nozzle seal, I'd normally do, you want to cover off the exhaust and inlet port and see what you get. There is a fairly good seal there. You can hear it puffing a bit. Now it is bone dry now, so I'm going to just lubricate this with some oil. Now, oils you can use. This stuff's amazing. Waldo Customs, they do some great oils. They've re-released it recently, and I think you can get it from a few different places now rather than from him directly. I've only got a little bit left, so I do need to get some more. Or Waldo, if you're listening, feel free to send me some. I will be much appreciated. So I've just lubricated that. I've only put a little drop on the nozzle piston head and just lube that slightly. That will mean that will move nicely in there. One thing I will do now as well is I'll probably do the guides as well. You can see there are slots in the side of the blowback unit. I just want to lubricate those so that it moves nicely inside it. Now, the finish on the Toka Marui one was nice and shiny. You can see it's quite flat on this Garda one. So the downside to that is that it might potentially bind up a bit. And this is what I was talking about, breaking in the system. So that's nice and tight on there, which is good. We want to reinstall our our nozzle spring, which goes in the bottom slot down here. And then there was the guide there, which will go inside the spring and press in there. So that is our nozzle, our blowback assembly, should I say, all assembled there, ready to go in our slide. Now, because we've got this separate ejector, I need to put this in before I put this in place. The ejector does fall out though. It's not pressed in place, so I'm going to have to sort of balance this. This will usually take me a couple of attempts to get it 100%. I'm going to say that and it's going to drop straight in. So try and make sure it goes in square. And that has gone straight in. The ejector is still there as well. However, the nozzle, the blowback unit hasn't gone all the way home. And you can just about see there, it's sitting up slightly. Now, the reason for that, you can see at the front, I'm just going to move myself so I can see. You can just about see here, poking out, there is the nozzle return spring guide. So I need to push that in, and that should allow that to drop down. There we go. That's now all the way home. Now, I could now reinstall the rear sight and put the 2 screws in, but I've got this little part, the dummy fire pin. You don't strictly need this, but, you know, I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. And basically this just creates a false firing pin look. Now, I've done one of these before on a different pistol, and it was a bit of a pain actually. But essentially what you've got here is you've got 2 long screws, which obviously go through the housing. You've got your dummy firing pin, and then there's a little spring, which is, you can see that, very, very small. So what I'm going to need to do is partially assemble this. So put that into there. Put the spring, I can get it out of this screw. Put the spring in, like so, and then I'm going to have to try to get this in place, which is probably going to be more difficult than it sounds. So I'm going to have to tip this up a bit to get this in, I think. Now I don't want to bend that spring, so I'm going to have to press the spring in before I slide that home. There we go, that's gone in perfect. And we need our rear sight to go back in place underneath. I'm not going to tip the slide over, because if I do, that's going to fall out. I'm going to use these long screws now instead of the ones I got with the Toka Marui pistol into there. And now I need an Allen key to do those up. So I'll put that down there. Now I know you're probably all going to shout at me saying, oh, I've got that little screwdriver kit that I can just use one of the Allen keys from that. But I normally keep this little set. It's not expensive, it's like a cheap set. But I like to use an Allen key because sometimes you can over tighten with a with a screwdriver type. So that's starting to tighten there. I'll do the same with this one here. That's starting to go in. And I don't tend to use it the other way around. I tend to use it with in the up position here, because then I'm not applying too much torque to it. You could, and I probably will at a later stage, maybe Loctite those 2 in, but I'll see if they work their way loose. Once I've got it into a certain point, I'm just going to give it a bit of a nip up, like that. Same on that one there. And that's in. And you can see we've now got our dummy firing pin, which moves, which is what we want. This also works as a cushion for the hammer, because the hammer, like a high capper, as it drops, it just falls onto the frame. It doesn't actually hit the slide, the back of the slide at all. So it does cause damage to the hammer and the unit itself. So this will help cushion that, so that isn't such a problem. But that is the slide assembly all done there. We're just checking function. That is a little bit sticky, and I'm expecting that to be the case for a little while, because again, they need to break in. You can hear, hopefully, how gritty that is, and that's that coating. And again, Garda used this coating, and it's okay, but it can cause problems, which I'm fully expecting. But so far, so good. This has gone together quite nicely. We can see we've got our fake roll pins in either side there. Our ejector is in there nicely. Didn't end up dropping it. We've got our Turkey Marui sights back in. I think I will get the steel ones because there's some on this one. You can hopefully see there's a bit of sort of casting there. So I'd like to try and get rid of that if possible. But anyway, that's the slide built. We're now going to go down the route of the barrel. Our stock barrel actually looks very clean. Very little use on this by the looks of things. So I'm not going to bother disassembling this. All I'm going to do is just make sure these screws are tight. Not crazy tight, of course, but I don't want them walking themselves out. That's in. So now we're going to look at our barrel. If I can find where I put that. Now I went for the two-piece stainless outer barrel, because I say I'm going sort of a two-tone look with this. Now this is the 226 rail outer barrel. Now I don't know if this one's going to work or not. You're about to find out with me here. I've already screwed it together, however it is sort of tightened down with an O-ring there so that it snugs down tight and shouldn't come undone. But I've been told that this is the same. If we look at the other one, the stock one, everything looks pretty much identical. So I'm quite comfortable that's probably correct. So that will go in there, hopefully. Now, trying to get the barrel all the way home here, you can see that that little cam is getting stuck here. Now, if we're looking the end of the barrel, hopefully you can see this, but the inner barrel is stuck on the rifling, if you like. Now, I believe that's why they made this in two pieces. So what I'm actually going to do is undo this outer barrel first and remove it so I can get this in place and then reattach the outer barrel, which should mean that moves okay. Now, it is quite gritty. So I think what I am going to do is put a little bit of oil on that outer barrel and on this cam, because I'm expecting that to cause a bit of friction. Now, if you're not sure where it's catching, just work the barrel back and forth a bit. And then that will create a patch on whatever part it's rubbing on. And then you should be able to figure out what needs oiling or what needs some adjusting. I'm expecting this to be wearing on the barrel, the inner barrel that is. And we can see there are some marks on the top there. And some marks here as well, some quite fresh ones there. So this tells me I'm going to need to put a little bit of oil on here. We'll just check the other part. Nowhere on that I can see that's causing any problem. Maybe a tiny bit here. So I'll put a little bit of oil on that as well, just so that it's got some lubrication. There's some in here as well, actually, looking at that. So that's probably more substantial, which is where it goes into here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some oil on the outer barrel, and then I'll work it back and forth a bit. So I'm going to put a dab there, a dab on the end, a dab on that shiny part there, and a dab on the cam. I'm going to reassemble this now. Yeah, I can feel that it's this unit which is the problem at the moment. So I'm going to reassemble this as well, and I can work it back and forth then. And this is what I was talking about braking. You know, people assume that because these parts are designed to work with this, and you know, you wonder why you pay your tech considerable amount to fit a metal kit. It isn't just a case of a Lego kit that you put together. It requires a bit of braking. You can see that is, if that goes all the way in there, that is quite tight to get back out. So they'll work this back and forth and bed that in for you so it moves nicely. That's already starting to move a lot better now. I think that's going to be fine. There we go, that's moving a lot better now. And what we'll do is we'll just take it apart and check it. We're probably going to have some darkened oil on the barrel to show where it's been rubbing. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this is the bit that's rubbing at the moment, definitely. So we could do one or two things. We could try to open this out if there's a burr, which I can actually feel a burr there. So I think I am just going to open that out with a file. You really need a set of these little files for this kind of work. I'm just going to take that burr off the end. You could do this potentially with some emery paper or wet and dry or something like that. I'm just going to try and take that edge off. But this is what you're paying your tech for. You guys think sometimes that, oh yeah, well, I'm just paying him this much to, you know, put the thing together. That's not actually the case. Normally there's a lot of this kind of stuff they have to work through. Now I'm no tech. I've never been an airsoft tech or anything. This is just a hobby to me. And I've figured this out as I go. But I have the utmost respect for techs who end up doing these metal kit conversions, because I'm sure some people just sort of think that this is, you know, a Lego kit that you put together. And if you pay good money for a top-end kit, it essentially is just a bit of a Lego kit. But with the cheaper, like I say, the Garda stuff is a bit cheaper, then it does sometimes require a bit of work. Again, I'm just going to clear the inside of that out a bit. Right, let's reassemble that. It's already feeling a lot better. Now that is actually okay on that barrel at the moment now. I'm feeling a bit of... Now I think what's happening here, looking at this, you can see this, there's a gap here which is between the hop unit and the outer barrel, and that's to allow this to move back and forth. Now that is quite tight there. It's not really allowing it to move very nicely. So there's definitely something binding here. So I'm going to have to look further into that. So we'll take this apart and let's have a look and see what's binding up and what's causing the problem. So having a look at it, I've taken the outer barrel off now, and if we look at the stock hop unit, you can see there's a lot of shiny marks on the front edge of this. There's also some on the edge there, and there's some around here. So this tells me that there's some sort of contact between the hop unit and this new outer barrel. And this is the kind of thing I was talking about with these things rarely just go together and work. I was actually really surprised the slide went together as quickly as it did. So what's happening here, we need to identify where it's rubbing. Now, if we look inside the hop unit, after I put some oil in, you can see there's a dark mark here. And that's where the hop unit is starting to rub against that. There's also a couple of little dark marks on the edge here and here. Now, it could be a couple of things. It could be that this is really nicely made and straight, and the hop unit isn't. However, Tokyo Marui stuff's normally pretty good, so I'm expecting this to be the problem. So I could potentially file the inside of this, or use wet and dry paper and sort of open it out slightly. Or I could do the same to the hop unit here. Now, I know the hop unit's going to be a lot easier to work on, because trying to work inside of this is going to be quite difficult, and then I'm not going to be able to get the scratches out very easily after. So I'm actually going to work on the hop unit itself here. So I'm going to clean the oil off, and then I'm going to start filing it. Now, this is quite an aggressive file. It's flat on one side, curved on the other. These are great for doing sort of barrels and stuff like that. However, for this, I'm going to use something a bit different. Which is like a super, super fine tooth. I don't know what brand this is. This was in a watchmaker's set I got years ago. And it's fantastic for doing aluminium work because it's very, very fine and takes a very, very small amount off, and it doesn't leave much in the way of graunch marks behind. So what I'm going to do is just file a little bit off of these contact patches. Nothing too much. And I'm just going to curve the edge a little bit there, just so that it's not making such severe contact. We've got a bit of wear on the top here. Now that looks like it's an edge which is catching there, so I'm going to try and take that off of the hop unit there. This edge here, I'm just going to, again, take the edge off it a little bit. Notice I'm not filing loads away, I'm literally just taking the tiniest amount off, just so that it will clear a bit better. On this side here, you can see there's some substantial graunch marks there, and I'm just going to take a little bit off the edge here. Nothing too major. And just curve the edge slightly. Now I can see there is a slightly deeper mark there. So it's definitely making contact. Basically what I suspect is there's a burr on the edge of this. And if I run my finger on the inside, I can't really feel much of one. There is one that side, so that's going to need a little bit of work. So I'm going to use my coarser file for this. I'm just going to take the edge off of that there. Same on this one here. And there's also some burring on the inside of that, which is what was causing these marks. So I'm just going to run that on the inside, try and take those off. I might use my smaller file for this. This really fine one isn't great for stainless steel. It's really good for aluminium though, so, or alloy. Okay, a little bit on the inside here as well, just making sure there's no burrs on it. Now you could do this another way. You could just assemble it all and work the pistol back and forth, and that will eventually bed it in. But I don't want to go down that route because you're going to get lots of gunk from the oiled parts and the wear inside. So that's gone on a lot nicer now. It's nice and loose here now, which is good. So sorry, I'm moving out of camera there. It's moving nice and loose here now, but as it goes in there, it's quite tight. So I suspect that's binding up in here and on here. So let's pull that back out and have another look. Doesn't look too bad there. It's okay there, it's not brilliant. Let's just file that off anyway. And you know, you can sit here and think like, oh, okay, brilliant. Yeah, I'll get my sort of metal kit for my Toka Marui and I'll fit that together. That'll take me like, I don't know, an hour. No, you can see already, all we've done is the slide. That actually went together really well because a lot of the parts were supplied with the slide anyway. But we're spending quite a lot of time modifying just one part, which is obviously the outer barrel here. That is not going together as well. Now that could be because the newer versions are better, and it's very possible that could be the case. But I suspect the other ones are exactly the same. So let's put that back in again. That's still a little tight. This first stage is really loose now though, which is good. So that's nice and loose now. Let's see where that's making contact. So we're going to work this back and forth a bit, see where we get the contact. Okay, I've got some contact here, which is fresh. This all looks from what I did before. That's looking pretty good now. Doesn't seem to be any extra contact there. There's a little bit in here as well. So I think what I'm going to do here is, rather than do any more to that, I'm just going to run the file over that part here just to give it a little bit more clearance. Now this should make very little difference if I was to change back to the old outer barrel. In actual fact, let's do that. You can see making no difference at all. So we want to do as minimal as we can here. We really want to modify the parts we're fitting rather than the stock pistol. But in this case, I think this is the better way to go. At the end of the day, this is, it's my pistol. So, if I mess it up, it's my fault, not anyone else's. So, if you're doing a kit for somebody else, then obviously bear that in mind, that the decisions you make are not necessarily yours. So it's best to speak to the customer and see what they want to do. Again, here I am talking like I'm a tech. I'm not, but you know what I mean. So that's looking pretty good now. So that's a lot better. Do a little bit more. That's looking good. I'll do a little bit on this edge here. That's looking good. That all looks pretty good now, but I'm going to give it one last little go over there just to make sure there's causing no problems. And again, I'm taking off a very, very slight amount here. Really just taking the outer coating off. So there we go, that looks a lot better. Let's try it again. Bear in mind there's no oil on this now. So with a bit of oil, that'll be a lot better. That's looking good now. That's starting to work back and forth nicely. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to compare it to the original barrel and see how far that drops down in that notch. It doesn't look like it drops down all the way. You can see there. It goes down a bit, but not all the way down. Which I think this is now doing the same. Yeah, not quite as much. It's probably up or down a little bit. So let's just work that up and down a bit, see where it's pinching. And again, I can work on that. Now, I could have just slapped this together and sort of worked it and see where the problems are and let it bed itself in. And that is a legit way of doing it, but it's a bit better to try and work through where you think it's causing problems rather than just sort of throwing it together and seeing what's what. Now, I'm struggling to see where that was contacted. I think it's here. I don't see a lot. Maybe there's some here as well. So I'm going to take a little bit more off here. Again, not a massive amount, just a small amount. And as you see, I've only just started to remove the black coating here. So there's really not a lot I'm taking off. I'll take a little bit more off there. And I'm going to take a bit more off this front piece here. And again, just curving the edge off of that, just so it doesn't get caught. All right, it's looking a bit better. A tiny bit off this side again. I don't think this bit's causing me the problem though, to be fair. Right, let's try that. Oh, that's a hell of a lot better. Look at that. That's what we want. Right, so that's good. I can put this back on now. In fact, before I do that, I am going to oil this once again. So I'm going to put a little bit on where it's making contact in the inside of the inner barrel and on the end. I'll put a little bit there. That's a bit too much. Move that around then. So a bit in there. Now obviously you don't want to get this oil on the hop rubber, so I don't want to use too much. I've probably slopped on a bit too much there, to be fair, but I'll probably take this down once I've sort of got it together and worked it a little bit, and then we'll clean it off inside before I test it out properly. So we'll screw that back on. Oh, much better, look at that. So you can see there, I put it together and it was stuck. And, some people would just go, oh, okay, well, I'll throw it together and see what happens. And obviously that is going to cause you all kinds of problems if that's like that. It's just going to jam up. It's probably going to empty all the gas out the second you pull the trigger. So that's why you want to sort of work through these methodically and see if there's any contact problems. So that barrel's working good now. So we're going to pop that in. We can then see what it looks like. It's a bit tight going in. Potentially then I need to put the barrel on afterwards, which is possible. That goes in there. Then I can pull this forwards. Okay. Okay, and then that winds in there. Okay, there we go. Now, I think we've got a problem already. That shouldn't have been that hard to put in. I think what the problem is, and I can already see what the problem is actually, if we look inside here, you can just about make out that the clip for the front sight has moved. It's moved back and isn't clipped in properly. So that's clipped back in place now. If we look from the front, you can just about see this is sitting proud. So that's actually pushing down on the outer barrel. Now I did see on the just dropped everything there. I did see on the website for the on the Rainbow 8 website, there was a metal spring which holds this in place, which I didn't think I'd need. In hindsight, maybe I do need that. So I'm going to have to place an order for that now anyway. But for the meantime, what I could do is we could just remove that, because at the end of the day, this pistol isn't put together and ready just yet. So I'm going to remove that clip, if I can. There we go. And I'm going to remove the front sight, because the second we go to cycle it, that's probably going to fall off. And then that should go in there nicely now. Oh, look at that, straight away. Well, there we go. That's with the stainless steel outer barrel there. And the stainless steel pins. Looks pretty good. Okay, next thing for the slide was, obviously we've got the guide rod here. Now I've bought the stainless steel one. Here it is. Again, for the E2. So let's unwrap this. And that is apparently CNC'd. I quite believe them. So we're going to use the stock spring for now, just because you want to try and retain as much of the original Toka Marui as you can. Initially, when you first put it together, make sure it all works, and then we want to upgrade. Well, I will anyway. And just checking the two parts are identical. They look like they are. So that's all fine. So this then goes in here. And then we push that forwards. And that should lock into the housing. There we go. And that's our slide assembled, apart from that front sight, which I'm going to order that clip up. Looking in then there, you've got that two-tone look. It's a shame about the outer barrel. Now you can do a couple of things with that. I normally just use a permanent marker on the end there so you don't see the inner barrel. You can see all the faux rifling in the end there, which is nice, so it'd be nice to lose that. But there we go, there's the top slide assembled. So now what we'll do is we're going to put it back on the frame and see how well it works. If it works great, brilliantly, but I'm not expecting miracles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the rails. Just a tiny bit, we don't want to go mad. I'm going to slide it onto the frame. Okay, and then rotate that round. There we go. There we go. There's our steel slide fitted. That's actually cycling quite well. It's got a nice clack to it as well, unlike the plastic one. So we've got our mag. I haven't actually gassed this for a while, so I'll just stick some gas in it, make sure we're all right. Yeah, it was full anyway. Okay, so let's try it out. There we go. Now, you can see how slow it's cycling compared to with the plastic slide. If you look back at my video with the plastic slide, you'll see. So it is quite lethargic to go forwards. Now that's to be expected. It's a considerably heavier slide. So that is to be expected. And a lot of these parts are all wearing in as well. That nozzle potentially is a bit tight and will take a bit of time to bed in. And again, once I've got it all assembled, I'm then going to strip it completely apart and see if there's anything causing any problems. You can see we've got some oil coming out from the back here, which is normal because obviously the slide's going backwards and forwards. But I'm quite pleased with that action there. That's nice and smooth. So, there we go. So you can see that nozzle has stuck out there. So that should be returning. There we go. So a lot of that is due to this heavier slide. And obviously the heavier slide means that instead that nozzle and the actual cup piston head wouldn't normally require as much pressure to blow the slide back because obviously it's a lightweight slide. With a heavier slide, it's really, pushing the boundaries of what it's capable of doing. So there we go, it's still doing it there. And there we go, still doing it. So we could do it one or two ways. We can either oil that cup, or alternatively we'll go for the Garda one, or we could go for a O-ring type, which would be a bit easier. I think I do have one that will fit this. So there we go. There's the top slide done. Next on our 226 build is going to be the frame. Obviously, that would be the next part. If you have any questions about the build so far, I know it's a long one, let me know. Any questions about the parts I've used and how I've done the clearancing, feel free to ask. Just like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.